Welcome to Step Zero. I'm your host, Caitlin Henry. Allie Clark joins us today, a former wine and Xanax girl whose journey took her from medical detox and inpatient rehab to 8.5 years of continuous sobriety. She began her recovery in the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and along the way discovered that her drinking and drug use were not the problem, but the protective layer covering something much deeper, complex PTSD. Committed to understanding why she coped the way she did, Allie spent 3 years in intensive trauma therapy where she finally connected the dots between childhood trauma, chronic dysregulation, and her addictions. Today, she's walking a path built on grounded sobriety and honest trauma recovery. A former teacher and stay-at-home mom, she recently stepped fully into sober coaching, supporting women who are ready to walk a more conscious path into recovery and healing. Through education, motivation, and inspiration, and even play, Allie is helping other women find their sober genius to create the life of their dreams. Allie is living proof that once you understand the why, sobriety becomes something you get to choose, not something you have to force, which is a huge thing on Step Zero. So, Allie, welcome to the show today. I can't wait to have this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here. So I just wanted to start out, take us back wherever you want to start. What did your relationship look like with alcohol and substances from a young age?
Okay, so, first of all, it is so empowering to be here today because this actually marks 24 years since alcohol changed for me. So
Wow.
I, I know when you invited me to be on the podcast and today was open, it just felt really synchronistic. I thought, yes, say yes, do it on that day. So
Oh, that's so cool.
24 years ago, alcohol went from being something that I used recreationally with friends, socially. And honestly, I used it for play to being something that was medicinal. I used it to numb out, to anesthetize, and to escape. What is so crazy is in that day, alcohol did something for me that it had never done before. It took me out of my mind, out of my body, and out of a situation that I did not want to be in. And I loved it. Like, this is amazing. And the day that I did not want to be in was the day that my mom died. So, but before that, alcohol, like I said, it was totally recreational. I was a very good girl. I did not drink until I was a senior in high school. And the first time I drank, I wasn't even going to drink that night. I was going to be DD as usual. I did not want to get sick. I feel like in high school, a lot of my friends, as they were trying to figure out how to drink, they were always throwing up. And I would look at them and I'd think, how is this fun? No, I don't want to do this. So I would be the DD. People loved it. And
I
one
think
night,
more women and men probably, but more women we need to hear this, that you don't have to start at some young age and use it as a coping mechanism. It can look like you don't start until you're a senior in high school and you're the last one to board the train.
literally, I think
Yeah.
I was probably the last one. And my friend Ben, we'd gone to a concert. I live in Kansas City, grew up in Kansas City, and we went to a concert in Lawrence, Kansas all day long. And Ben said, come on, you're always DD. Just have some fun. I'll be DD. I promise I'll keep an eye on you. You won't get sick. Okay, I'll do it. So I drank, and that first drink, I mean, I can still remember it. I went from an introvert to an extrovert. I went from serious to playful. I went from work to chill. I'm like, this is magical. I love this. So of course I kept going, and then I don't remember. I blacked out. And I came to in the front of my mom's minivan. She had a white Dodge Caravan with maroon interior, and I got sick all over. I got sick all over the car and Ben, the DD. It was horrible. And I thought, again, you guys, this is not fun. Who said this is fun? And the next day I called Ben. Somehow he got me in my house, by the way, and kind of snuck me past my parents. I did not get in trouble. And I called the next day. I said, Ben, what in the world? You said you were going to keep track of me. And he goes, I tried. You went from beer to Everclear And when I told you not to do that, you said, I know what I'm doing. Back off. I was
Mm.
like, okay, that sounds like me. Oh, shoot. So I thought, oh God, I'm such a failure. I suck at this. And
Well, and from the beginning, trying to manage and control, knowing, hey, it doesn't have to get to the point of throwing up, but you knew in the back of your head, no, I'm going to take this to the extreme.
oh yeah, I loved it. I mean, from the first drink, I wanted more of that and I couldn't control it. And so honestly, that began day one of drinking began day one of making rules around my drinking. And rule number one, don't throw up. And rule number two was don't take anybody else's spot. I mean, my friends cleaned out the minivan, they cleaned me up. It was awful. I was mortified. So I did figure it out though. I have great friends and they coached me and I learned how to drink and have these rules. And so I did get through senior year, had a great time on senior spring break and then went to college. I went to St. Louis University. I was an elementary education major. I joined a sorority. I was a Gamma Phi Beta and Gamma Phi. And I think most sororities, right? They do philanthropy and sisterhood and chapter meetings, all the things, and date nights and formals where it's binge drinking. And I joined right in. I didn't see any reason not to. But my rules, they kept me. So I never got sick again. I wasn't causing trouble for anybody. And lots of girls did. And it was such a relief to be like, I've got this under control?
Yeah, again, you could manage and control in the beginning. Something important for the listener to hear that this doesn't have to look like you have your first drink and then you hit rock bottom. This is a progressive disease.
Very, really slow and steady for sure. So I actually changed for me though. The rules changed a little bit between my sophomore and junior year of college. That is the summer that my mom was diagnosed with metastatic kidney cancer. And so she was diagnosed in the summer and I did go back to school. My parents were really big on education and they said, we don't want you pausing, getting your degree and moving on with your life.
Yeah.
Go for it, go back. And I would go between St. Louis and Kansas City pretty much every other weekend. And so figuring out how to drink during this time where, on some weekends I was in this very heavy cancer situation. And then the other weekends I'm in this college sorority girl thing. And to go back and forth, it was like taking off one mask and putting on another. It was exhausting. It
Oh,
was very, very
yeah.
hard. So the first sorority event that I went to, Presents, where we brought in all the new initiates and presented them. I didn't throw up, but I drank enough tequila shots. I started sobbing. I couldn't stop crying. They had to take me home early, my boyfriends and my roommate, and I was an absolute mess. And as I was crying, my roommate was like, what's going on? And I just said, I don't think I should be here. My mom's so sick. I think I should be at home. She was like, hey, we're going to call your dad tomorrow. So I called and he clarified because I said, how much time does she have? He said, 2 years. We hope 2 years. So, go enjoy college, come home when you can, but we don't want you derailing your life for this diagnosis. Like, okay. So I am a very high achiever, right? As a kiddo, I was a straight A student. I always looked good. I was a leader, involved in sports, all the things. And so I used those great skills, high achieving skills to figure out how I could do both, have a great time in college and manage this cancer thing. And I crushed it. November of that year, I managed to go to these sorority events, have a great time and detach from the reality of the cancer diagnosis. And I remember there was a weekend I did not go home. I stayed in St. Louis because we had Gamma Phi Moon Man. And the next day was my boyfriend's formal. I'm like, I am not missing this. I want to play. So I went to the Moon Man, had the best time. And it was like that first night that I drank where I just had a blast, but I didn't cry and I didn't get sick. And I'm like, I got this. Well, the next day I got a call that I needed to come home. My mom was in the hospital and my dad called and he said, you need to come home. And I could just tell from his voice, I go, it's bad, isn't it? And he said, yeah. I go, what happened? And he said, you know what? I'll tell you when you get here. I just want you to drive safely. And I said, should my boyfriend come? And he goes, I think we need family today. said, okay. So before I hung up, I said, is this it? He goes, I think it is.
Mm.
I was absolutely stunned. So I drive to Kansas City and sent my boyfriend onto the formal. And when I got there, I found out she had coded when she was having her lung strain. She had fluid in her lung and she coded and she was without oxygen so long that there was essentially a catastrophic brain injury. And they were able to bring her back, but she had so much brain damage that she was never going to be able to come home. She was going to need to go live in a facility the rest of her days, months, however long it was, because she needed 24/7 care. And so we had the option to go ahead and start a morphine drip and let her pass peacefully, or let her go to a facility. And that was, I feel like, an easy choice for our family. There would be no quality of life for her. And eventually she was going to pass away from the cancer.
So,
So we
how were you
did.
feeling at this time? Were you able to go home and abstain from drinking while this was going on, or did you use drinking even while you were home to cope?
Oh, this is when it changed. I
Yeah,
used it.
yeah.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting is the day she died. So I was called home on Saturday and she passed away Monday morning.
Wow.
And so it was very quick. I mean, I was absolutely shocked. And I remember going from the hospital home. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon and my aunt handed me a glass of wine. And at that point, up until that point, I was not allowed to drink at home. I mean, my parents were very strict. And I looked at my dad because I was 20. I looked at my dad and he goes, go ahead. She goes, you need this.
Mm.
So at 1 o'clock on a Monday, I took that drink of wine and I was like, whoo, that's better. And so before I even finished that full glass, she refilled it. She goes, here, you need more. I mean, she was right. I needed something, anything to get some relief. And it was so fast and so instantaneous.
I talk a lot about how alcohol was our solution. It wasn't our problem. It was the thing that helped us not feel the feelings that we didn't want to feel or didn't even know how to feel and cope with.
I had zero experience dealing with that level of death. I think I'd lost my great grandparent. I hadn't even lost a grandparent yet. So losing my mother was, first of all, traumatizing, but it was also shocking because her death was unexpected at that time. I just didn't have much warning. And in that process of her being sick, also, there was no preparation ahead of time from either of my parents. There was no therapy. And we didn't talk about it. I grew up in a family. Here were our basic rules. We didn't talk about anything. We shoved it under the rug. We did not air our dirty laundry. In fact, it was super important to protect the reputation of the family and stay loyal. Go ahead and lie too, to cover anything that may not look good. And then you had to look good. You had to look put together.
Yep.
Nothing to see here was like the family mantra. It was so toxic and dysfunctional. And actually, it didn't start with my parents. And I feel like that's so important to say because on both sides of, their families, they came from these same rules. And I've learned that those stemmed from three big things: substance use disorder, workaholism, and narcissism. Narcissism probably being the most damaging because that comes with psychological and emotional abuse. And
Yeah, and I'm so excited for you to be on here and talk about PTSD. So tell us about your rock bottom. How did you get to the point where you knew alcohol wasn't serving you anymore?
right? So at 20, it changed and became medicinal. And it took me until 36 to hit rock bottom.
I need the listener to hear this. At 20, she knew I'm using this to cope, but I'm not going to address anything. And then it wasn't until you were 36. So,
Mm-hmm.
wow. And again, progressive disease. So, take us to when you were 36 and how did you progressively figure this out?
So 36, at that point, I wasn't using just wine. I kept telling myself, I'm drinking to relieve the stress of motherhood. I had 3 kids. They were all 23 months apart. My amazing husband travels for work a lot. He's a medical device rep. It was my victory lap, my ritual, and I was deep in mommy wine culture. And I just thought, I'm doing what my peers are doing. relaxing at the end of the day and taking the edge off. And the truth for me, which took a lot of work to get to, was I was drinking to relieve the stress of my childhood and the trauma of growing up with those rules, and particularly the trauma of my mom's death and the silence and secrecy that went with the details. But motherhood triggered my childhood trauma. I think if anybody else listening is a mom, I'd have these experiences with my kids and it would bring feelings up. And those feelings felt like childhood. And I would end up having emotional flashbacks, panic, overwhelm, major anxiety, all the things. And I just thought, it's motherhood. I was very confused.
I do not think people talk about this enough. I felt very similar about having a baby, thinking that was going to be the thing to make me happy. And in all reality, it's like this little mirror projecting back all these things that you yet to have worked on for not only yourself, but then you're also trying to guide them through eventually their big feelings, their emotions, what's going on with them. And it's this dichotomy. No one talks about how that triggers you in motherhood and how it actually is a catalyst for many mothers to start drinking more, not less. I was of that same camp. Oh, I'm going to have these kids. They're going to make me so happy. I'm not going to need booze anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came along, and not to any fault of their own. It was all me and my big feelings. I was like, I need to drink this to numb that.
Exactly. And I don't see the problem. What's the big
Everyone's
deal?
doing what I'm doing. All the other moms are drinking as much as I am. If, like you said, not maybe some
Yeah,
are more, just like in high
right.
school or college. Well, I don't have a problem because they're drinking more than me.
Way more. And then, I wasn't doing cocaine.
Mm.
So some of my friends were, and I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not that bad, right? And I had it in my coffee cup at sports games, or the Yeti or whatever. I mean, it was part of everything at that point for me. My kids at the time were 8, 6, and 4. And so I really thought, I don't see a problem with my drinking, but I did see a problem with the way I was feeling and how I was managing my life. I was an absolute hot mess express 110% of the time. I was also using Xanax, and that had started about, okay, let me think, 2.5 years earlier. So, and that's when the wine alone stopped working. I essentially had, for lack of better words, a mental breakdown. It was right before Thanksgiving, which my mom passed away right around Thanksgiving. And so it was a trauma anniversary, and I didn't have that language. I didn't understand what was going on. And when I had this mental breakdown, my husband said, "You've got to get some help." I said, "I've got to get some help." So I saw a psychiatrist, and he gave me anxiety meds. And he said, "Your symptoms are so severe. They want you to take Xanax 3 times a day
Oh
for
my
the next two
gosh, three
months."
times a day. And here's
Thank
what
you.
kills me.
Thank you.
Here's what kills me about this too. It's like, did he ask you about your alcohol use? Was he
No,
asking? Yeah, no, they don't ask. And
no.
even for me, if I'd go to my annual appointment just to get my blood drawn and checkup, I would lie. Oh, two to
Oh,
four
yeah,
drinks a week? I was having 2 to 4 drinks a day.
at least.
Yeah.
Yes. Because one drink for me was 2 drinks, right? I had a huge glass of wine. I don't know about you, but when I got married, I registered for these fishbowl wine glasses from Pottery Barn. They were beautiful and huge. And I'm like, that's a glass, right?
Yeah,
That's like
totally.
two a
And
drink.
we're, as mothers who have husbands who travel, that was me as well when I was still married, not anymore. But it was, I can pour as much as I want. I'm not at a bar where they're having a 6 ounce pour. We're doing 9 ounces or above, and I'm finishing a bottle of wine, putting it in the back of my recycle, and popping open another, only having one glass to make it look like I only had one glass.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And then moving on to the box, so I can't see how much I'm actually pouring because it's
totally.
covered with cardboard. So I
Yeah.
don't have to tune in to the truth. I loved
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, anything that I could see through, I'm like, oh. So I couldn't see through the box and I could stay in more denial about how much I was drinking. But the
Yeah.
psychiatrist, he promised me, you cannot get addicted if you take it 3 times a day for the next 2 months.
Wow.
Now, after 2 months, different story. And all he said about the drinking was just don't drink too much. So to me, I
Technically,
defined
I'm pretty sure the bottle says like don't ingest alcohol on these. So it's like, okay,
it
just don't
does.
drink too much.
It says it on that, and I believe the other anti-anxiety medication, right? But he told me I could. He gave me permission. I'm like,
Mhm.
heck yes. So he said at 2 months though, we're going to check in and see how this is going. And I don't want you taking it 3 times a day after that, but we'll talk. So I picked up my prescriptions. I went home. I popped both pills with a glass of wine. Hello. That was exactly how I felt the day I had that glass of wine when my mom died. I left my mind. I left my body. I left situations I didn't want to be in. I'm like, this feels like superpowers. This is incredible.
So
It's
many
incredible.
listeners can relate. Thank you for being honest and sharing that.
I literally felt like I can do anything now
Yeah.
because I can't feel anything. So let's freaking go. And this will come as a shock. It didn't go well. Essentially I spent 2.5 years strategizing. How many drinks can I have? How many pills can I have? What time of day do I do this? And how do I do it so I don't end up catatonic? Because both were depressing my central nervous system. And when they would wear off, my whole system had been fighting to get back to homeostasis. I want to tell you that every symptom of complex PTSD I was feeling was tenfold from normal because my nervous system was trying to get back to normal as well. I've never felt so awful in my body in my entire life. And I'm taking these things and using these things trying to get relief. And it truly made all of it worse. And I had no idea. I was clueless. I was very uneducated. So in that 2.5 years of combining both, I mean, my problems stacked on top of each other, never getting resolved. In addition to these substances were causing problems. And I would say the last 6 months, especially, I was terrified. I knew that something was really wrong. I really didn't know that it was addiction. And that sounds kind of crazy. Again, I was very uneducated. Here's what I thought. Well, I wasn't living under a bridge. It was not drinking out of a brown paper bag. I don't know if this is addiction. I think I'm just crazy. I think something's just defective about me. And so every day for 6 months, I woke up and I'd say, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to take a pill today. I did not make it long in the day before I had one or the other because the withdrawal symptoms were horrific. So were the CPTSD symptoms. And then became a race to chase. I don't want to feel like that. So I was panicking about the panic. And I ended up hitting bottom. It was like a 3-week horrific situation. I joke, I call my husband Sparky. His name is Ben, but it's the Ben that was the DD the first time I drank.
Oh,
I,
cute.
I married him. He's such
That's
a good guy. Okay, so Ben, wonderful man. I call him Sparky because he's a little bit like Clark Griswold, especially when we travel. And we went to a family wedding in Philadelphia and we drove from Kansas City with our 3 kids. So we were totally the Griswolds in the family truckster. And that's when I really started to realize just how horrible it was because my addiction came with me and I left a lot of the norm behind. That came with me. And people had been telling me, don't ruin the way. Don't drink too much. Get it together. Keep your act together. I'm like, I hear you. So
So
the
people
day
were
of,
noticing, but no one was telling you go to rehab.
no, exactly. People
Yeah.
noticed, but nobody had said enough is enough. So the day of the wedding, I didn't take a drink during the day and I didn't take a pill. And that was not what my body was used to. Horrible idea because I had withdrawal and the symptoms were horrific. The way I like to say it is it's like I had been in a dim room and every light came on and I didn't have any pills to take. The bar didn't open until 5 p.m. I even had to ask if they could get me a glass of wine early because I was so miserable. And it was a nightmare. I did cause problems that day. It was awful. And to this day, I am just so sorry to family. Both of our families were at this wedding and it was, a family member's wedding, and I was so ashamed and so embarrassed
Well, and
because
that shame piling up, then it's like you just want to drink more. When you don't have the coping skills or tools, you don't want to feel
yeah,
those feelings either.
I really truly believed I was a failure. I
Mm.
thought I am ruining people's lives. I am a failure as a mother. I'm a failure as a woman. I'm a failure as a wife, a daughter-in-law, a sister-in-law, a daughter, all the things. And so we traveled from the wedding to the Jersey Shore for family vacation after what, and I'm like, this is my last hurrah. I'm going to get it
Mm.
together after this. While I was at the Jersey Shore, I found out my neighbor's mom died, and she died of complications from alcoholism. And I called my neighbor and said, I'm so sorry I can't come to the funeral. She goes, oh, don't worry about it. I hated her. She drank my whole life.
I have goosebumps up and down my whole body.
Yeah, I
Wow.
I couldn't unhear that. She said, I'm glad she's dead. And I thought, that's going to be my kid. So deeper resolve. Okay, let's go. Let's go. On the way home, we stopped by SLU. My kids had never seen the campus. So it felt like all the lights were still on. And then every trauma box in my brain that I had taped shut popped right open when I saw that campus. Everything came flooding back. It's the first time I'd gone back since I graduated. And I didn't have any language for this trauma or understanding. I just knew I felt terror. I felt the feelings I felt then. And I wanted to escape. The wine and Xanax had stopped working. I also knew I needed to stop using them. And I was terrified to stop because I was going to have to face that. So I got home. We got home. All the luggage goes into the living room, not to be unpacked for a full week, by the way, because I crawled into bed and I tried to drink myself to death. I
Mm.
just thought, there is no way out. There's no way out. Because if I stop using, I have to face this horrific trauma and I don't think I can survive it. And if I keep using, I don't think I can survive it. And so the easier one seemed maybe just not surviving the using. And so, man, I'm a high achiever, but I failed to drink myself to death. Thank God. About 5 days in, my husband found my boxes of wine in the closet. He's 6'7", and I was hiding them on the top shelf. Really, really bad idea. And he
Yeah.
finally found those and he was furious. And he said, that's it. He couldn't even talk to me that night. He was so angry. And I called my best friend sobbing on FaceTime and I said, I need help. I said, I'm drinking all the time and I'm using Xanax. Can you come over? And she's a social worker. Her name is Susie. And Susie came over and she fed me. She bathed me. She put me to bed. And she told my husband, she's really sick. We need to get her to medical detox. Neither of us knew anything about medical detox. And so in the meantime, Ben reached out to a family friend of ours that was sober and had gone to detox and treatment. And he talked to her and she hooked him up with a recovery consultant. And he set up his own little mini intervention. It was just him. And he drew a line in the sand. And he said, if you take one more drink, I'm going to take the kids and leave. And I knew he was serious. Now I negotiated and I said, just let me taper. I promise I'll stop. I promise. I promise. And he said, no, no. And I negotiated until the withdrawal symptoms were so awful, I couldn't take it anymore. And I did call this friend of ours that was in recovery. And she said, well, when are you going to go to medical detox? I said, I don't know. I'm just not sure I'm going to do it. And she said, well, you know, you can die detoxing if you try to do it at home, right? And I said, wait, what? I had no idea how dangerous detoxing on your own from alcohol could be. And she goes, if you die detoxing, do you know how ridiculous that's going to seem? Because you just told me you're willing to consider trying it. I go, wait a minute, good point. She goes, just go to detox. You'll feel better anyway. They
Yeah.
help it. They help you feel better as these symptoms, as the substances get out of your system. My husband had two options for me for detox facilities, and I just wasn't sure. So I ended up calling this place in Kansas City called First Call. It is a phenomenal resource. If anybody lives in the Kansas City area, please look them up. They have a crisis line. And I called and they said, the first thing they said, we are so glad that you called us. That takes so much courage. We are so proud of you. Who are these like amazing humans?
Yeah, so
And
no one was shaming you. You were shaming
no,
yourself, but no one else was. They just all wanted you to get help.
yes.
Yeah.
And my husband didn't shame me at all. He just
Mm.
said no more. It was
Yeah.
incredible.
Boundaries.
He was a rock star. He could host a mini workshop on how to do it. It was so good. So I talked to this lady from First Call and she said, the more honest you can be with me, the better direction I can point you in. I told her everything and she suggested a place. And that was one of the places my husband suggested. And I thought, there's the answer. So I went to medical detox at a place called Cottonwood Springs in Kansas City. And it was terrifying. It was one of the scariest things I've ever done, but it was one of the best things I've ever done.
For those of you not watching on video, you are such a light and you have such beauty to you. I can't imagine what you must have looked like going in and being as disheveled as you say you were. And the growth you've had since then is immeasurable. So I just want to point that out for those, again, it's on YouTube, but for those not
Thank
watching.
you.
Yeah.
What is hysterical is, I'd never gone to medical detox before. And remember, I grew up in a family where you had to look good.
Yeah.
So I went and picked out my outfit for detox.
As only a stay-at-home mom who's had PTSD from family issues would. And a high achiever, by the way. I'm relating so much.
So what did I put on? Well, a white tennis skirt and this beautiful blue short sleeve top from Athleta. And I did my hair and I put on my teddies.
What these people there thought. And this is what I want the listener to hear, though. Like, you don't have to be under a bridge, homeless, have lost everything. You can literally be at the point where you're still going to your closet and you're putting on a tennis skirt and an Athleta top to show up to detox because God forbid someone thinks that there's anything wrong.
Yeah, remember, nothing to see here. So I walk in with my rolling suitcase in my tennis outfit.
Yeah.
And they do the intake. I'm starting withdrawal, so I'm shaking. They gave me a sack lunch. I felt like a kindergartner. It had an Uncrustable chips and an applesauce. It was delicious. I hadn't really been eating much. I'm like, well, I already like it here, but I'm really cold. Could I please have a sweatshirt? And they said, no, we're going through your bag right now. I said, why? Okay, so when I got out of the intake, they're going through my whole bag at the nurse's station. They're cutting every drawstring. I go, whoa, I had these Lululemon pants and they're cutting the drawstring. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they said, you can't have any string. I said, why in the world not? They said, suicide risk. And I thought, oh my God, where am I? Mm-hmm. They walked me into my room and there is no door. The bathroom is a half door. They locked everything in a trunk of mine. I couldn't have my razor. And they still wouldn't let me have a sweatshirt. They said, you need to go to class. Class? What? And they said, you just go to that room. You're going to figure it out. And I walked in to the room. And this young man looks at me and he said, are you the new nurse? I said, no, I am a client. He goes, did you just get off the courts? I said, I don't play tennis. He goes, why are you wearing that? I said, I just started laughing. I said, I have no idea. I am such a fraud. He became my detox bestie. His name was Jordan. He was 20 years old. It was his 7th time in detox. Wow. And when he told me it was his 7th time, I said, you mean you can come back more than once? He said, this isn't the chicken pox. I said, oh my gosh. Okay. So in this first class, they asked me, do you think you have a problem with alcohol? Even though I've been checked into medical detox, I said, I'm actually not sure because I don't live under a bridge. And I swear this guy said, we've got a live one.
Yeah, exactly. And I needed my listeners to hear that because it's all about, you don't have to hit rock bottom to get sober. And this for you wasn't even in the back of your head, your rock bottom. I don't know if I have a problem, even though I'm in medical detox.
Even though I've been told I can't detox at home, I'm 110% not sure. And all they said was, what happens after you take the first drink? Do
Mm.
you stop? I said, no, never. They said, you're in the right place. You could be an alcoholic. And as soon as they
Mhm.
said that, I thought, wow. They said, did you ever consider just not drinking? I said, I no, I never did. I was just going to moderate. They said, would you be willing to consider it? I said, I think so. They said, if you just don't drink, it's actually easier than trying to control it and drink some. That had never dawned on me. I
No,
was a
it's
straight
never
A
even a
student.
thought. No, totally. My first sponsor used to say I went to AA to learn how to drink like a lady. Like she also wanted to moderate, and that people would laugh because it's like you realize at one point or another that you can't just have one. It's like a Lay's potato chip.
No,
You can't
can't
just
have
have
one.
one. And so therefore you can't have any. So tell us
Yes.
what did detox teach you and then how did you get to a 12-step program?
Detox taught me I wasn't alone. I was not the only one struggling with this.
Yes.
It also taught me that I could end up under the bridge because a lady was brought in who had been living under a bridge and was homeless. And we were in the same place. We sat next to each other. We were the same. She just had gone down further than I had. And that helped me open up to the possibility of going to rehab. And my buddy Jordan, he said, I don't understand why you wouldn't go. I don't know why you think it's going to be a breeze to get sober in the summer. Don't you have 3 kids? I said, I do. He goes, so they're not in school. And isn't your husband your drinking buddy? I said, he is. He goes, good luck. I said, wait, what do you mean? He goes, oh, it's so much harder than you think. So, and all these other people said, you're so lucky that you have the opportunity to even go. I don't know why you're not willing. I called my husband and said, okay, I'll go. And he booked me a bed at Harmony Foundation. It's now called Harmony Recovery in Estes Park, Colorado. So I spent 5 days in medical detox in Kansas City. I took one day at home. I had to repack my bag. I did not pack well. I swapped out my tennis gear for things to go to Colorado, and I needed one day with my kids. And then we went to Estes Park. He dropped me off. And when we pulled up to Harmony, I can't explain it. I knew I was exactly where I should be. I felt complete and total relief and like there was hope.
That's amazing because I think so many people fight this process and to show up like you're picking out a college or you're picking your future spouse. It sounds like you had this aha moment. This is right where I need to be. And you actually were able to come to full gratitude for the opportunity.
I am so glad I said yes. It really would have been it's not impossible, but it would have buld been very difficult to get and stay sober that summer. And because I had that opportunity, I promised myself I would give it my all. You know, I'm a straight A student. I'm a high achiever. I said, okay, I'll take everything you've got. Show me the way. And I followed directions. I did everything they suggested, including a stupid vision board. I was so
Mm.
annoyed. We ended up paying out of pocket for treatment. Our insurance didn't cover it. I remember thinking, I am paying $800 a day to cut out of magazines and glue onto a poster board. I can't believe this. And I was so angry. And really, I missed my kids. I missed my husband. I missed my life. I was having a meltdown and I didn't really know how to regulate my feelings or express myself. So I got
Yeah.
rebellious and I quit my vision board. I found a spread of Bradley Cooper and I cut him out and I taped him to the rehab walls on the phone. I didn't get to have my cell phone. It was 2017 and everyone started cracking up. I just started playing and my therapist came out and she started laughing. She said, who did this? I said, I did. She goes, never would have pegged you. She said, you know, he's sober, right? I said, what? She said, he's probably 10 years sober. I said, what? He was my first vision board.
That's
I
so
every
crazy because I thought you were cutting it out because you knew that. You didn't know.
I had no idea.
I needed
And
to
what
see that same thing. I needed to see celebrities. I needed to see people who seem to have their lives together or were very successful that were sober. So I love that that was, I call them God shots.
110%. And it came through play and it felt so organic and it gave me hope that I could have a really amazing life sober because look at Bradley Cooper. And I thought it can't be that bad. If Bradley Cooper is willing to get sober and stay sober, it has to be at least somewhat good. Plus he's doing it in Hollywood. If he can do this in Hollywood, I can do this in the state of Kansas.
I love
I'm
this
willing to
because
try.
so many people say that celebrities especially shouldn't be public about their sobriety, and I beg to differ. And this is why I'm so open on this podcast and I'm so open about it. Because when I first got sober, I didn't see anyone who was successful that was sober. And if I had seen someone like me, then I might have tried it sooner.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I didn't know anybody who was sober.
Yes.
I was 36 years old. It was 2017. We had 2 family friends that were my parents' age. I didn't have any peers, but Bradley Cooper, heck yes. And being in detox and rehab, I knew it wasn't just me. And these were dynamic women that I was around. These were strong, capable, intelligent women, just like me. They were mothers, they were sisters, they were daughters, they were teachers. And I thought, okay. And I learned so much in rehab. I was educated on substance use disorder, what happens to your body, what happens to your brain. And once I learned that, I couldn't unlearn it.
Yes.
It was awesome.
That's why I love Annie Grace, This Naked Mind, because it's all about the facts. How bad alcohol is. I needed to hear that. I was wrapping presents 7 Christmases ago, and I was enthralled by these podcasts and these books. And I just remember thinking, this is so toxic. What have I been doing to my body?
Exactly. It is so toxic.
Yeah.
And I just did not have that association prior to detox and rehab.
And
I actually thought it was good for me.
Exactly.
Heart healthy.
Heart healthy, have 1 glass of wine a day, you'll be fine. This is what's been ingrained in us over the past few decades, well, hundreds of years really. But for us, coming into this new sober curious environment, coming into this wellness space, it is so interesting that it's finally gaining traction that this stuff is toxic, causes cancer. It's just, yeah, it's so interesting. So take me to where you were when you're leaving detox. And did they give you, like I said, the 12 steps? Did they push you into being comfortable with that? And then I want to segue into, when did you start dredging up kind of the PTSD component of this? And what work did you do there?
So straight from I went right into AA. They said, if nothing else, just go to meetings.
Yeah.
Stay linked with other people who understand. So we stayed in Estes Park for a few days actually when I got picked up because I'd seen so many people in rehab come right back that I was so scared if I relapsed, my husband could just stick me right back in. I made it 3 days in Estes, came home to Kansas City, and I jumped straight into AA. I went to 90 meetings in 90 days. I got a sponsor. I worked the steps. I did everything they asked. I shared in birthday meetings. I ended up leading a meeting eventually. I led it every Friday morning for 5 years. I helped transition that group when the pandemic hit onto Zoom. I was on the business committee. I did all the things. I mean, I was all in.
The high achiever in AA. I'm right there with you, girl. I transitioned my morning meeting. My 6:45 happened every day. I was the one who said, okay, this is day that the pandemic went down. We are getting on Zoom. Send the link to everyone you know. We're making this happen. So I'm parallel with what you're talking about here. Because again, it's the high achiever in us. And if I'm not going to go focus on drinking and be hungover in a bag of shit, then I'm going to go put my focus and energy towards something positive. I've never seen so many nice cars in the parking lot than I have in a meeting, and people have no idea. So again, I like to just talk about 12-step recovery and not really mention AA, but I'm loving your story because it's so important for the listener to hear who might be too afraid to go to meetings, who might say, well, I'm too high achieving for that. I beg to differ. You're needed there. And the connection and community was something I craved as well.
And get this, that first AA meeting, I walk in, same thing, really nice cars in the parking lot. The men are wearing polos and khakis and belts. I think they had Sperry's on. I'm like, wait a second. The women looked great, Going, these are some really put together alcoholics, aren't they? I mean, they're just really normal people. They were just like me. And their stories were like mine. It was amazing. Also, in all of that, I mean, I found friends. I found people who I really had a lot of other things in common with too. And as I got to know these people and we'd go to lunch, we'd get coffee, we'd have fun together. And it was in a meeting about 2.5 years in when I shared, and my buddy Steve stopped me after and he said, Allie, listen, I know you belong here. Your story, it tracks. You deserve your seat. I didn't understand why you drank until today. I said, enlighten me. And he said, it's the PTSD. I said, I didn't say that, Steve. He said, no, it's what you said. I didn't know you had PTSD. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, okay, I think you have PTSD. Thankfully, I was really curious. I said, oh. He said, I have a great friend that's a trauma therapist. If you're ever interested, here's her name and number. And so I looked her up. I did a nice deep dive on her Instagram. And
this is so interesting because I feel like we get the amount of sober time we get, and then something is presented that we're ready to work on at that time. So it's in the detox and in the rehab, your body, your nervous system wasn't ready for it. You needed to gain a few years of sobriety under your belt and be ingrained in the connection in the community. And I want to say that because I think other people think that they need to go from A to Z right away. And no, these things will be presented along your journey. And really, the emotional sobriety starts to accrue, at least for me, year 2 to 3 and beyond.
exactly. I needed safety and solid sobriety first.
Yes.
And at 2.5 years, that was there. I had a group. I had solid time under my belt with sobriety. I didn't feel like I was going to drink. And I had some confidence back. And so I was willing to explore maybe what else I needed. And so I reached out to this therapist and I made an appointment, filled out all my intake paperwork. And session 1, by the end, she said, you do not have PTSD. I said, okay. She said, you have complex PTSD. I said, I have never heard of that. What are you talking about? And she said, we talked about PTSD. She used the Vietnam War as an example. There was a definitive beginning and end for the men and women that went over and participated. Complex PTSD is this ongoing trauma in childhood where there is no beginning and end, and it is consistent. And because of that, you develop these patterns and behaviors to survive and cope. And while they served you at the time, eventually they're going to cause problems. And the solution to that is trauma therapy. It's being able to access what happened and grieve without setting off the internal alarm system in your body. And this therapist was so skilled, and we worked together for 3 years doing internal family systems, somatic experiencing, and cognitive behavioral therapy. And I learned that for me, when I am in fight or flight mode, which was, most of the time as a kid, I fawn, I people please, I comply. And that was causing a lot of problems and not serving me anymore. And when we were able to heal the wounds and I was able to grieve, then I could start working on other patterns of behavior and using other tools to manage overwhelm and life, just life really. Alcohol and Xanax are not part of my protocol. She said, essentially I had parts within my system that believed it's like I was on fire. And those firefighters were trying to put out the fire with wine and Xanax. And they were trying to protect these exiles that really felt they needed to stay hidden. And those exiles have been brought home. They're all part of the inner family now. They're allowed to be here. They feel very safe. And when it feels like there's a fire, I get to use other tools to bring my nervous system back into regulation. Movement is a huge one. And I do a ton of somatic exercises so that my body can keep working the trauma out, but also just to regulate my nervous system. Well, daily. And that's what I would say about complex PTSD is just like my sobriety, it is a daily recovery. I put work in every single day to try to stay in the middle of the herd. And some days are not great. I still have symptoms of CPTSD. I have nightmares, emotional flashbacks, high anxiety, panic episodes. My inner critic can just chew me up and spit me out. But I know what to do to manage and not go down deep in a rabbit hole.
Well, and you're aware that it's even coming up. I think so many people, it's the unconscious. They don't even know it's happening. So what happened is you brought this awareness to your consciousness. And now when it happens, at least you can notice it quicker. It's not always right away, I'm sure. And so what is the best tool that you've learned? Let's say it's coming up in the moment. What's one of the best tools you learned to re-regulate in that moment?
Walking, moving my body, bilateral stimulation. My brain calms, my body calms. Or I love the workout, which, oh my goodness, even just laying on the floor and doing some of these very simple somatic exercises, my body relaxes. I start yawning. That's a huge sign that, and I believe, I'm going to say this right, my parasympathetic nervous system is getting back and my vagus nerve relaxes. Also, cold exposure is a huge one. So we have a nugget ice maker. I will suck on ice, or even right now, I have a little bag of ice. Because I never know when I'm going to get overwhelmed.
That
I
is
have that. I can
so
put it on my
cool.
wrist. And
Okay.
sweet tarts.
Oh my
I
gosh.
have sweet tarts always and everywhere, sour stuff. It's just because I can have it anywhere. So sometimes I'll have a little panic episode even in church. So I always have really cold water and sweet tarts. And I swear the priest is looking at me like, what are you doing? And I'm like,
Wow.
soothing my nervous system. What's it
This
to you?
is so interesting. I'm loving this. I've never heard any of this before. And so I'm super excited to dive into the last segment I want to talk to you about today is what inspired you to start helping others with trauma recovery? Because I'm already sucked in and how do people work with you and what do you do with them? Tell us how that manifested.
So I had stayed really consistent in AA for a long time. And my trauma therapist said, at some point, your trauma recovery and AA may conflict. And if that happens, that's your cue to see what else is out there. And I started working with her in 2020. And the nice thing about that is all these other communities started popping up, particularly online. And thanks to the pandemic, I learned Zoom meetings are my best friend. I'm an introvert. My nervous system stays much more regulated. And it's really I was getting a lot of pressure to be a sponsor, and that wasn't feeling authentic to me anymore because I'd done so much trauma work. I didn't feel like I could really give people just AA and say, here you go, you got this. I felt like it needed to be more. I was getting in a little bit of trouble in AA because I was going outside their guardrails. I was also sending emails for my meetings and stuff, and they said I was promoting my meetings. I kind of felt that some of the ways of AA, I was outgrowing and needing a community that was recovering out loud, using more technology and open to more modalities of healing. And thankfully, I did start looking because my sponsor was giving my name and number to people without my consent. And I thought, I can't do this. And when I said something to her, it's my responsibility to give my name and number and no one else's. We had some words. It was very difficult. But she said, you're not supposed to say no when asked to do something for AA. And that was probably my final straw of realizing the conflict is bigger than I realized because AA asks you to get out of yourself. And it's beautiful. And I need to do that sometimes. My trauma work requires me to get back in myself and have agency and choice and say no. And that I started looking to see what else was there. And I found Jen Hurst's Lighthouse Sobriety. And it just checked a lot of boxes. And it actually meshes my trauma recovery and sobriety recovery much more. I get to double dip. I'm using less time to do the work. And she had, for the very first time in the spring, Lighthouse Academy, which was training for sober women to become a sober coach. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 16 years, and I knew I wanted to do something. I knew I didn't want to go back to teaching. Between sobriety and my trauma, being in a room of first graders is no longer my jam. I love them, but I don't want to have them all day. It's not my thing anymore. And I wanted to do something connected to educating. And when I saw this come up for Lighthouse Academy, I thought, oh, maybe I'll just do it. What the heck? And
Well, and
I
it's the
think,
perfect combination of all the things that you are good at. Like even the high achiever is the entrepreneur. So you could do that. And then the teaching aspect, and then all the things you had with sobriety and the PTSD. And I do want to mention to the listener, I had Jen Hurst on a few weeks ago. So you can always go back and listen to that episode. But tell us about your experience.
I mean, it's just incredible. I feel that I have agency and autonomy within Lighthouse Sobriety. And I have a coach telling me these habits are protecting your sobriety. They're pouring into you and they're really good for your brain. And there's a lot of neuroscience involved. And AA doesn't have that, and that's okay. They've got their own thing, and it's wonderful in so many ways. Just the teacher in me, and to tell you the truth, I'm an inner nerd. I love to learn and I love information. The neuroscience, I love it, and particularly with PTSD. So, CPTSD, I don't want to forget the C, I've earned that. So, I joined both programs. I'm still in Lighthouse Sobriety, and in Lighthouse Academy, I think I signed up. I think the early bird special ended at midnight on a Sunday, and I signed up at 11:40. I thought, should I, shouldn't I? Then I realized I'm going to do it. Just save the extra money. Best decision I've made of 2025. The first week of doing her coaching, I was I thought this is it. This is exactly what I meant to do next. I loved it. Her way of coaching is wonderful. I felt very safe and free to learn and develop as a coach myself. And I, of course, I jumped all in and have given it my all. And I really didn't start coaching until August because her program was 13 weeks. And since then, I have been coaching one-on-one. I've been doing workshops. My husband and I have done some Instagram lives together. Once basketball season ends, he's a coach for all of our kids. When that ends, we'd like to do couples consulting where we just strategize and help couples one experience at a time. You're going on vacation for the first time. You need a strategy. Let's work together. If you never need us again, that's great. We needed that. And there's
Oh,
a
that's
huge
so
gap.
cool. I love that
It's been
huge gap
amazing.
with the couples. And I want to host couples retreats one day. I think that's just where it's at, where you're getting the other person involved, whether they have issues with needing 12 step or not. It's one of those things where you guys seem to have gone through each step of this along the way. I love your story, even down to when you were high schoolers. So, what a gift. So, what is your vision for? She calls it the Sober Dream Team. It's on Instagram, a Sober Dream Team. So, what's your vision and for now these women and maybe even men that you're trying to reach?
So my dream is using education, motivation, inspiration, and my favorite of all, play, to help mainly women, but men to find their sober genius and create the life of their dreams. I firmly believe that when you remove alcohol, you have the ability to tap into your full potential. And if you put together your dream team, you are unstoppable. And the reason I chose the Sober Dream Team, we're a big basketball family in the 1992 Olympic team. You've got Larry Bird, you've got Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, the best of the best. They were unstoppable. And maybe I'll be on your dream team, or maybe it's a different coach. Maybe it's AA, maybe it's Lighthouse, whatever it is. Find your dream team. If you're going to make this brave and bold decision to go alcohol free, be unstoppable. Put together your dream team and go create the life you deserve and you were meant for. So my hope is to keep doing one-on-one, the couples consulting. Eventually I will get to a group program. I am writing a book. I feel like there's info needed on the connection between trauma and addiction. And it's just my story. I'm not going to go major into the science piece of it. Science is not my strong suit. But the other thing that I really want to do is get certified in narcissistic abuse recovery as well. I want to be able to help women be alcohol free and heal from narcissistic abuse. I think there's a huge place for that too, because many people use substances to cope with narcissistic relationships. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
there's great healing out there.
Yeah, for sure. And again, not just another 12 step program. I love all the things you're meshing that are so needed and a part of this movement that is spurring in all sorts of directions. And that I always tell my sponsees, AA is one piece of my puzzle. If I have a 100-piece puzzle of my life, AA is only one of those. I need many other things, even breath work, a lot of spiritual practices, meditation, also in therapy. I even have a coach. So we can use all of these things. And I agree with you. You have to take things with a grain of salt when it comes to AA. I love what you shared today. Thank you for being so vulnerable and open with us. I do want to say we're at the end and I'm so sad, but I love doing these rapid fire questions. So I'm going to ask you a
Okay.
few questions and then we'll end our episode. What is one myth about sobriety that you love busting?
That it's boring.
Yeah.
It's so fun. It is
It's
so much
so
fun.
fun. It is. And that's again why I have this podcast. And hopefully our energy shows that to the listener. We both have very similar sober time and it happens over the course of a few years, but there are so many ways to have fun. Actually, one of my favorite things is to go to comedy shows now because I can remember the jokes. I used to go to comedy clubs and I would drink so much. I wasn't paying attention. I'd be like, 2 drink minimum. Like, hello, we're going to be fine over here.
Totally fine. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
All right. So something you believed in early sobriety that you no longer believe now.
That there's only one way.
Yes. So good. All right. Your go-to comfort ritual when life feels overwhelming.
A good show, popcorn, and a diet root beer.
Awesome. I have a little bit of a popcorn addiction right now. I've been trying to out myself about it to stop it, but it's not working. Love
It's
that.
constant. I love popcorn.
All right. And then what is one message for a woman who might be sober curious, but she's terrified? Like, I don't think I can do this. What would you say to her?
Sobriety is easier than drinking.
Mm,
It's also
beautiful.
way more glamorous. I thought I was glamorous when I was drinking a glass of wine. I
Mm.
am so much more glamorous sober.
Yes, the sober woman of grace. All right. And the last one, there is a trend on social media. It's if I could have coffee with my younger self, what would I show up and tell her? So if you could have coffee with your younger self, what would be one thing that you would want to say?
Trust your intuition. What you see, it's right. There is a way out. And take notes because you could write a bestseller.
Yeah, girl. I'm going to read that bestseller. I love Quit Lit. For those of you listening, it's called Quit Lit. It's a whole section. I just wrote a book, but I'm pushing the publishing date for those listeners that were waiting for that. Long story, but I cannot wait to read your book. And I agree. I like the ones that are stories. I don't need all the medical stuff. I get that from so many other places. I just need to hear the stories that were even not similar to mine. I didn't go to detox or rehab, and I was enthralled by this whole episode. So thank you for sharing with us. Tell our listener where they can find you. What are your links? And I'll put them in the show notes.
Everything you need right now is on Instagram. I've always been a turtle's pace in sobriety, and I am a turtle's pace in the Sober Dream Team. So stay tuned for all the other things.
She's at the Sober Dream Team on Instagram. So go and find her. If you're listening today, just realize you don't have to hit rock bottom to change. You can stop digging wherever you are right now. Our stories are proof of that. Our rock bottom is just when we choose to stop digging. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yay.